And we are live. Hello, Twins territory. How's it going? Welcome to another edition of Twins Daily Offseason Live. Here we are coming to you. Don't call it a rebuild. We are doing a little rehashing of yesterday's press conference where the Twins introduced Derek Shelton as the 15th manager in team history. I was there along with John Bonus of Twins Daily, Matthew Trueblood, Theo Tollefson, a few other casting characters. Of course, the classic members of the media that you've come to love. And speaking of people that you've come to love here, I'm gathered with two of Twins Daily's finest. In the middle square here, we have the pride of Twins Daily, Mr. Nick Nelson. What's going on, Nick?
Not too much. How's it going, gents?
Oh, it's always an adventure, right? We are happy to be here, and we are here with somebody who I don't know. Greg, give us a little talk about just what you're feeling about this press conference and the ballyhoo that goes around it, maybe.
Oh, geez, are we jumping right into this already?
We could talk about how he's doing.
I don't know what they said at the press conference. I didn't watch it. I didn't read. No, I did read it. It's a press conference. So, people say things and some of them they mean and some of them they don't. So it's like every other press conference we've ever had.
How about this? I know, Nick and Greg, that you two had a little back and forth on Twitter where you were just kind of talking about the importance and maybe lack thereof when it comes to these press conferences that are held by the teams. I just have a few ground rules before we get started here, all right? We got to keep it civil. We got to stay above the belt. That's really important. No touching of the hair or face, of course, naturally. And of course, the last one, most importantly, don't call it a rebuild, baby.
Can I jump in and say I don't like these rules. My belt is way higher than Nick's belt. That's a lot more room for him than it is for me. So I don't like this.
I can't reach above your belt, man. That's too high up.
Fair enough. So we call this "Don't Call It a Rebuild," and it's going to be a point that we talk about later. But Derek Shelton was adamant about saying that he does not believe in the term rebuild for what that's worth. So we can talk about that in a little bit here. But how about this? To the folks that are watching at home, please feel free to send in a comment. Let us know what you're thinking as you maybe read or heard some of this press conference or even just hearing some of our thoughts. We'd love for you to share in this conversation too. But me and Nick and Greg will start off by just talking about some of our thoughts. How about this? What were some big takeaways or lack thereof from this press conference? Nick, why don't we start with you? Did you learn anything? What were you hoping to learn that maybe you didn't get much of an impression of? The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't really any surprises, I don't think. I'm not expecting a lot of big breakthrough kinds of statements here. At the risk of being accused of ordering sushi at a pizza restaurant or whatever Greg said. I do, when you're having a press conference, it was good. When you're having a press conference to announce major news like this, I think the objective, right, is to try to energize the fans, try to get them feeling confident in your decision, try to make it feel like a big deal. So I understand the points that Greg has made and will make, I'm sure, which is that these things are very fluffy and empty by nature. I think we can understand that. But at the same time, this was the Twins' opportunity to speak to the public and to speak to their fans, right, and to try to get them feeling good about this hire. And I'm just not hearing anything that was very clear or like specific or anything that gives me a lot of confidence that there's going to be something different happening. It didn't really give any feel for the vision of the franchise and what's next. There was a lot of talk about, they were very clear with me about what's going to happen and what their plan is, but I won't speak to that, which, I mean, to me is just like, okay, that's because, no one's going to like to hear it. Right. So I came away feeling, these are things that I already felt like. It's just a lot of confirmation, really. But I think the fact that they were so uncomfortable to speak with any specificity to their intentions for next year was not surprising, but disappointing. And I think just some of the platitudes that we heard, it's going to be a competitive team. It's going to be a fundamental team. It's going to be fast-paced baseball. What does fast-paced baseball even mean? Like the pitchers are going to throw the pitches faster. I like a lot of it is like so empty that it's hard to make anything out of. And it's like, it's a new manager press conference. Like these things are par for the course, but this is a team that is in a bad state that just hired a guy who has the third worst winning percentage in history as a manager. Like I do think there is some sort of impetus to go and beyond and try to make, I would think they would have coordinated some sort of statements that would be a little more compelling than what we heard. So I think with the franchise already feeling like it is, it was just sort of another like, here we go again.
Fast-paced baseball. It means they're shedding a few seconds off of the pitch clock. It means they're swinging at first pitches more often. So some quicker outs, some quicker games. Get everybody home faster. Maybe that's what they're talking.
They're already
Running
so
outs
quick
on the bases, so nobody has to worry about the next plate appearance. Yeah, let's have some fast baseball.
Yeah, Greg, how about you? What were your thoughts? What did you learn anything new? Were you hoping to learn some more? You can go off of what Nick said, or just some of your own expectations.
Yeah. So I do want to kind of talk about what Nick first said, or one of the things you said to begin with, which now I'm blanking on. Oh no! Oh, when Shelton, it was actually one of the funnier things that I think I didn't watch it. I did read the whole transcript though. One of the funnier things that I heard him say, or kind of anybody say, was how he said, like, I got some good news, I got some good answers. I'm not willing to share them. Like, it's like concepts of good news. Like, I've got some great news. You guys are gonna love to hear it, but I'm not telling you yet. So that was hilarious. That I don't think that bodes well for sure. If we want to like read between the lines, I feel like anytime that you don't deliver good news, there probably is reason to doubt that there is good news coming, especially for an organization that is in the Twins' position where you're kind of. I think that they know that they have to kind of scratch and claw to try and get people re-engaged with the team. But beyond that, I don't know. I think that the only news that I would have benefited from, and I think it would have been out of place with a press conference like this. You're introducing the manager. For the most part, this is just like to get him out in front of people and say, "Hey, this is what my face looks like." And, like, nobody knows. Like, it's kind of personalize them, which is kind of undercut by Derek Shelton being the name, because Twins fans, if you have really any knowledge of the Twins above like the first level, I guess, like you're vaguely aware of the Twins. If you know kind of anything about the team, you've probably remember Derek Shelton being the bench coach for the 2019 Bomba Squad team, one of the best teams in Twins history in the regular season. So I think that, like, by nature, a press conference introducing somebody like Derek Shelton, there isn't really a ton like in that regard, where it's like, no, I have seen his face before, or I have heard his name before. I think that he did a decent job of kind of ingratiating himself and like seeming friendly and kind of a little bit more media savvy than maybe Rocco Baldelli came off as, which is beneficial, I suppose, if that's your goal in something like that. But, like, getting back to what I was saying, the only real thing that I think I could have cared about to have come out of that press conference is any information on payroll. And you didn't get that. I'm not surprised that you didn't get that. I wasn't expecting there to be information on payroll, but other than that, like, I could go the rest of the offseason not hearing from the Twins and I would not care. That's the only thing that I want to know, is what that number is, or at least, like, like last offseason, Jeremy Zoll, I think, came out and just said, like, hey, we're not cutting payroll further. Like even something as far as that, like, that would set off huge alarm bells in Twins fans. Like, if they were to say we're not cutting payroll further, and you're like, oh, like 120, that would be incredible. Like, that would be amazing. But short of getting any information like that, I can't care all that much.
Let's see. Our friend Adam in the chat says, I think there are no answers because the team is not spending. However, I thought Shelty came across very well. I will agree with Adam on that front, that I think that Derek Shelton came across very polished, and I think that's very important for somebody who's going to be public facing like he is. I think that is important. And I think that's something that Rocco did really well too, obviously. So I appreciate that. Whether we, had the same appreciation for the answers that he was giving, that's another thing to be considered here. But I do think that is important, that somebody in Shelty's position comes off as being polished. Let's see. Grifter Wannabe says, Randball Stu couldn't have come up with a better comedy sketch than what they laid out as expectations for the future. Ooh, I don't know, guys. I think
me on that. What was that?
Sorry, what, Greg?
I was saying, refresh me on what their expectations for the future would have been referring
I
to.
think he's referring to the fact that it was a very circular non-answer when they tried to ask him about it. Just we talked about it and there was great certainty, but I'm not willing to get into that yet. I think people have a valid point saying that's not really the manager's question to answer per se, but
Sure.
when you've aligned with the front office on this vision and the whole idea is to bring you in and get things on track, it'd be nice to hear some sort of substantive answer as to what that looks like. And like in terms of payroll and investments, like no one's looking for a number, but if I heard a remark that was along the lines of, I was informed that we cleared some financial obligations and we're looking to reinvest that money. Even something like that would be kind of reassuring, but I don't believe they're going to reinvest that money. And I think it's pretty telling that they're not even saying they're going to.
Yeah. Let's see. Barry says, talking like a politician, not impressed. I think there's a lot of people in that same boat. Bryce says, where is Ron Coomer? And TFT coming in saying, Coom Dog. There was a lot of former Twins. Yeah, there was a lot of former Twins at this press conference, as there always is. I mean, there's a lot of folks that just live locally, like Justin Morneau and LaTroy Hawkins. At least they were there. Corey Koski, Kent Herbeck, former manager Tom Kelly. So there's some pretty cool moments where Shelty got to go talk to Tom Kelly and talk about his
Eddie
appreciation.
Guardado there? Did I see?
There was no Eddie Guardado there, at least not that I saw.
Talking about Eddie, like in the transcripts, I heard him referring to Eddie closing out games, and I wasn't sure who that was.
Oh yeah, I think they were referring to him, but I don't think that he was there. I want to say that was maybe when he was talking about in spring training back in the day, back when he was the bench coach when they came to spring training. And I knew that Eddie Guardado did do some special instruction during spring training, so they went very heavy on that, on the fact that the Twins are a family and how important the alumni to the team are and how important it is to have their support. Which that is good. That is good to see. It's really fun to see them at press conferences like this. So yeah, that's very interesting. Let's see. Seth Stows of Twins Daily says, have to assume that they spent most of Monday going through what questions they'd get on Tuesday and prepare answers. There was definitely a lot of prepared answers for sure. And that's okay. That's what these press conferences are for. They want to put their best face forward. And of course they're going to have some kind of canned answers here, but I think it's fair to want some more and maybe some, genuine honesty in their responses. And at the same time, I kind of see it from their side too, that if they're going to be in front of cameras, of course, this is how it goes. How about this? What we kind of touched on it a little bit, and folks that are watching at home, please feel free to give your responses too. Nick, you kind of talked about things that you hope you would have learned. Are there any sort of responses that would have scratched that itch for you? I know you kind of touched just a little bit on, I wish they would have talked about, future stuff like that, but understanding that there are things that they can't say, was there any sort of response that you're like, ooh, that's good. I have not heard that before.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I think the one sort of angle that resonated with me was this idea of learning from failure. Because Shelton does feel like a very familiar sort of insular pick in some ways because he's been here before, but I do think it matters that he was in a different organization for the last 6 years, completely different situation. And I mean, it was the worst of the worst. Like, he's seen failure up close. He's seen the things that go into it. He's seen everything that they were doing wrong and probably had a lot of ideas of what he would change. And, you get so ingrained, maybe it's kind of hard to enact that change, especially towards the end.
Yeah.
So I think he's smart guy and a good baseball guy. And I am a believer in second chances and people from learning from failures. So that is a part to me that I think is, if you brought in a guy from a really successful organization, which they probably wouldn't want to come here, but they're going to be in a very sort of discombobulated situation, seeing what's going on here and maybe kind of taken aback. Whereas Shelton, I think, is going to be ready to get in the trenches, prepared for what he's about to encounter, and hopefully have some solutions that he's picked up over the way.
Yeah, and you know what, going along with that, I do think it's important to note that this Derek Shelton may not be the exact same Derek Shelton that left here in 2019. Like you said, he's got much more experience now, and he's seen up close and personal when things go wrong. And I think that context is important to bring into a new job like this. So that's a good point. I appreciate that. One thing that he said, somebody asked him about, what are you excited about coming forward with this team? What do you think this team is doing well so far? He brought up Byron Buxton. That's a great place to start, of course. Mm-hmm. He also talked about just the pitching depth that there is currently on the roster. Of course, a question is going to come up about whether that depth is going to remain on this roster in 2026 and beyond. Let's see. Our friend Bryce here says, might just be Stockholm syndrome talking, but I am getting myself excited to the potential Joe Ryan haul. He follows that up with, wait, screw that. I love you, Joe. Please don't go. Thank you, Bryce, for sending that in.
Doesn't want to piss off Grota.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I guess technically you could be saying, like, I'm super excited about the depth of this pitching staff because once we trade the top two, we've still got guys behind them, right? Like, I don't know.
It was very notable to me that
hard...
Buxton, I think Buxton was the only specific player he called out by name, at least during the public facing, televised segment of the interview, which, you're not going to mention Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez. That's striking to me because he probably knows there's a good chance they won't be here next year. What was really striking to me as well is that he did not call out Royce Lewis by name, which that's, I think, one of the main kind of players that people are looking for a new voice to come in here and kind of get going. And the kind of guy you'd hope a new manager would be excited to maybe kind of turn around. I was a little surprised he didn't say anything about Royce Lewis during that press conference.
Yeah, I don't know if that was necessarily a specific slight on Royce Lewis, but you're right. If we're going to plan on him being a cornerstone of this lineup, you would have hoped that he would have said, "Oh, I'm excited to, talk to Royce about what has gone, what's happened the last few years, how he can get back to kind of that high upside that we saw early on in his career." That is a good point. He did bring up Ryan Jeffers. He said that Jeffers wasn't in the big leagues when the last time he was in this Twins clubhouse, but he was kind of coming up and he was part of spring training that year. So who knows? Maybe that means that there's a better chance that Jeffers is sticking around for his contract year here. I think that would be welcomed by a lot of folks. Twins president of baseball and business operations, I guess, Derek Falvey, also talked just a little bit in a press scrum after that, just about, will we be building on the team that we saw finish the year in 2025? Will that team be back in 2026 with, additional pieces? Without saying too much, obviously, I thought that he gave a response that said, at this point, we're looking to add to this team, but a lot of stuff can change, obviously. And especially when you're talking to 10, 12 reporters right after a press conference like this. Let's see. Steve says,
can I interject real quick?
Yeah,
Sorry.
sure.
I just control F'd the transcript, and apparently in the side session that the reporters had with Shelton, it sounds like he also talked to Pablo by name. He said first thing he did was talk to Buck and Pablo. So if that's a mark that you're looking for, there is that.
I wonder if he talks to
the leaders.
Those are the leaders, along with can't forget who ended the year in the corner locker of that clubhouse, Mr. Erasmo Ramirez. I wonder if he gave Erasmo a call. We'll see.
Opening day starter.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see about that. That's that depth we're excited about, baby. Okay, let's see what's going on next here. Greg, the conversation that you and Nick had on Twitter, what's the point of a press conference? You touched on it a little bit. You think it's maybe a little inflated. Do you want to go into that just a little bit more?
Yeah. It's, can I first say that I hate everybody in the media. Every journalist is a little dweeb who forces us to read their writing. They're just writers. Ooh. They're not in the sports world. They are writers. They're no different than George R.R. Martin. Am I right? No, I don't know. Like it's one of the, I don't know, I guess a principle of mine that I just really don't care about press conferences, because I think that they are all just kind of, you just run out and you say things, and even if you're getting questions, it's still like an organizational kind of controlled message. It's not like unless you really catch somebody off balance and get them to say something that they'll regret. Like for the most part, they're all saying things that they went in kind of preparing to say. And so like when we talk about something like, well, how are we going to get the team turned around? And Shelton says something along the lines of, oh, we're going to play fast baseball and we're going to work hard and we're going to be gritty. It's like, okay, like, yeah, that's basically what everybody says. There's nothing really to be gained. And I don't exactly know what you're supposed to, like, what's the answer that you had hoped for Derek Shelton to have said in that specific instance? Like what answer would have been satisfactory? I don't really think that there is one. And so I don't really get all that kind of caught up in following these things super, super closely. And sometimes I take pot shots at people too who do. And that's part of the Greg game, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's the game that we're all playing constantly, the Greg game, and we love it.
Unfortunately.
Yeah,
Got
unfortunately.
an
Here.
immaculate Greg lined up after this.
Oh, perfect. Hey, speaking of segments on the Twins Off Daily podcast, shameless plug here. Bryce says, need Royce to stick around because Royce says the darndest things is the best off daily bit, with all due respect to is Chris Paddock still a Twin? Bryce, thank you so much for listening to the Twins Off Daily podcast. We appreciate that, man. Yeah, Royce says the darndest things. Yeah, would be nice if he was at this press conference, and would be nice to hear his thoughts on some of this too. I'm sure we'll get plenty of Royce says the darndest things at spring training. Nick, how about you? What do you talked about, this is the chance for the franchise to kind of excite their fan base with a press conference like this. You thought they failed in this regard. What else is the point of a press conference? What do you think is their intention here? And besides just getting some enthusiasm, what do you think that audience or people that watch this are hoping to glean from it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything Greg said. Like, it is a big show. It is like prep, it's a press release essentially. It's PR by nature. But I just feel, and this was not like atypical of a press conference. I'm not saying, and I don't have a problem with anything Shelton even said really, but the Twins are just in a position where trust is so worn down with them in the fan base, and morale is so low. And they've made these moves. They positioned basically firing Rocco Baldelli as the solution to their problems because they didn't really do anything else. No changes to the front office.
Sure.
So it's just to give a little more of a compelling vision of what's going to change. It contributes to this trend of like the Twins treating their fans like they're stupid or they're not paying attention. Like a guy coming in and saying, we're going to be great on the fundamentals, when like everyone who's paying attention knows that he was for how bad the fundamentals in Pittsburgh were by the time he left. I'm not saying that's his fault, but you got to at least say something a little more to explain, well, why was the team I just left so bad fundamentally and competitively that I got fired in May? And like I said, I think the ruminating on it for 4 months and having conversations with people and learning from failure is legitimate. But I guess I would have liked to hear a little more specific vision of like what's going to be different. I think he talked about maybe going back to the spring training setup that him and Mulder were doing back in 2018. It's interesting to hear him talk about going back to like speed and fundamentals, though, when like the biggest beacon of success of the last Twins 10 years, and certainly the one that sort of brings Shelton back into the fold, was 2019 when he was the bench coach. And that was not a fast team, not really a fundamental team. They just socked homers. So there's a part of me that feels like there's just this nostalgia factor that the Twins are drawn to. Like, it's very telling to me that Derek Shelton and James Rowson were the top two finalists, two guys from the 2019 team. They're trying to go back to that well, and they're almost trying to cross over that Bomba Squad success with like this old time Twins baseball hustle, playing gritty, playing fundamentals, playing small ball, which there's have a lot of mixed messaging. And that's sort of my struggle with the Twins is like, if they're committing to a rebuild and they're just going to take a step back, like I understand that. And that's what I believe is the case, but let's just be a little more open about it. And like, let's be a little more consistent in our decision making, because here we are bringing in a 55-year-old manager with a bunch of experience, and we're trading at the deadline for a bunch of players that are majorly ready as opposed to farther out prospects for the most part. What is the plan? There's just no clarity. And in fact, the confusion and sort of muddled messaging is making it even worse for fans like me, who I can accept if it's going to be a rebuild. Like, I think that's probably what they kind of have to do now, but let's just be a little more open about it. And being caught in the middle is just frustrating from a fan standpoint, I think.
I think that's fair. Just going to the chat here from a couple of Twins Daily personalities. Tom Froman says, I was surprised Shelton called his own firing, quote, the right decision, and acknowledged they probably needed a different leader. That's probably a very surprising thing for a lot of people to hear. And I'm glad that that felt like an honest and a genuine answer. He talked about how hard it was for the last 4 months of just being at home and reflecting on kind of what went wrong in Pittsburgh. And, he couldn't go into exactly, what went wrong at this press conference because he doesn't want to throw anybody under the bus at this point. But I'm very curious to hear his thoughts, maybe off the record, of what went wrong in Pittsburgh and how he can avoid that in Minnesota going forward. Brock also comes in. He has a question for us. Will the Twins sign a multi-year contract with the player this offseason? Look, there's a lot of uncertainty looming. There's the chance that of a lockout in 2027 that becomes greater and greater with each passing day. It feels like it's hard to really lean towards yes, they will sign a multi-year contract as much as we would like it, but at the same time, anything can happen. What do you guys think?
You does I mean, if we're talking about the Minnesota Twins specifically, I feel like a multi-year contract is exactly a 2-year contract, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the position that they're in, I would say that there's probably not going to be running out for a 3, 4, 5-year contract. Um, does it really matter if you sign a guy for a second year ahead of a lockout? Like, what is the danger in signing a guy to a second year that you might not have baseball? Um, I don't know. I feel like there's a chance that maybe they do sign a 2-year deal to either like a first base type or like a late inning reliever type um, for exactly 2 years. But otherwise, I don't really see that being in the plan.
How about this? I feel like what's more likely for making additions to this team, and Derek Falvey kind of talked about this in that side scrum. I think trades are probably more likely at this point,
Yeah.
and that might be a good thing. You know what I mean? Like we've seen that this core has kind of grown maybe just a little bit sour. At least things haven't, of course, gone right over the last couple of years. Trades might be where they can, find some strength for strength trades at the big league level. It's rare in this day and age, but at the same time, it's not impossible. So I think that might be an area where they hope to explore maybe just a little bit more. Tom
I
comes
don't
back and
even
says,
know what that would look like though, in terms of like a strength for strength that's trying to help them win next year, because like the only things of value they have to trade are
Say it.
Ryan
Say
and
it. Yeah.
Lopez and
Do
prospects
it.
basically.
Do it.
So I mean, like could they trade Royce Lewis and get something maybe, but they're not getting like a major impact player probably. So I think that's another area I get stuck is like, I agree trades would really be, because I don't think free agency is somewhere they're going to be trying to improve the team for next year significantly. But it's just hard to understand what a trade that makes them better next year looks like, because yeah, they're just in that long-term focus right now. And if anything, I think they're going to be trading good players for prospect.
could be, but I don't know. I think that there are guys like, Royce Lewis, you'd be selling relatively low on him, and Matt Wallner, maybe you wouldn't be selling at the highest point here, but I do think that they would appeal to some other teams, maybe not for the value that you are hoping to get in return, but at the same time, we're looking at this from a Twins perspective for the most part. I'd be interested to hear what some of these maybe freezer burned assets look like to some other organizations, and whether they would, maybe they're willing to send some a backup catcher, or you know what I mean, so something that maybe fills a hole. I don't know if it'd be exciting. I don't know if it'd be an exciting trade, but at the same time, like I said, it feels like we're only looking at this from one angle. Tom says they have
Just waiting on
73
the
corner outfielders. The market is cornered. Yeah, that's true. What were you
I
saying,
was
Greg?
gonna say, like they're gonna trade Trevor Larnach. That is the greatest trade chip that any team has right now, right? Everybody needs Trevor Larnach, and only one team has Trevor Larnach. And so he's gonna net like a seventh inning setup man maybe. So that's probably that. Honestly, that's probably part of where their heads are at right now when they're talking about making those trades instead of free agent moves. I'm guessing it's something like that, just begging and pleading and hoping that somebody is still high on Edouard Julien.
Yeah.
Maybe give me a backup catcher or something. I don't
Yeah. How about this? Let's keep moving on here. Here are some questions that I still had coming out of that. I wish I would have known more, or maybe asked more a little bit about the interview process and kind of who's running this show right now, because Derek Falvey's got this big overarching kind of title to him of president of baseball and business operations. Was he the head person in this interview process? Was Jeremy Zoll taking more of a front seat in this? How did this kind of differ from the last time they were looking for a manager after the 2018 season when they brought Rocco in? I feel like then they were kind of, going in fresh, maybe looking for somebody that was inexperienced. That's different now. They were looking for somebody a little more experienced. And I think we'll talk about the coaching staff later on. I think they're going to be seeking more experienced coaching, to bring aboard here. Also, I found it very interesting that Derek Shelton, first he thanked Joe Pohlad and the Pohlad family. Immediately after, he thanked Dave St. Peter, who was in attendance at this press conference. Maybe that has something to do with just the fact that St. Peter was the president the last time Shelton was here. And, it was good to see him. And maybe he was just throwing him out there. He saw them in the crowd. But am I taking crazy pills? Dave St. Peter, he's like a consultant now, right? Like he's no longer the president. And this is really funny. I looked up on the Twins website. He is still listed as the president on the MLB.com/Twins webpage, which for what it's worth, the bio on him hasn't been updated since 2024. It says like 2024 is Dave St. Peter's 23rd year in the organization, something like that. Am I taking crazy pills? Why is Dave St. Peter front and center here when in these thank yous?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard a lot about that, right? Like, there's been a lot of talk about how Derek Falvey really doesn't seem like he's taken over this business side that much. I think when he was asked about it, he made a comment how Dave St. Peter's still very involved, and it was almost like and it's like he's still like he's the boss. It kind of feels like that was all contingent on the sale process happening, and now that got stuck in the mud. I was interested by that too. I don't know. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, I was gonna say. So I was curious, and so I was gonna look up what Derek Falvey is listed at, and it's one of those situations where Google has a different headline than the actual page, so it's been updated recently. But like on Google, he's labeled executive vice president, chief baseball operations. Then you click on the link, and it says that he's the president of baseball operations. So, interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, I was hoping to learn a little bit more about the interview process and who is kind of running the show here and where the balance lies, how that balance changes year to year, because it was last offseason, right, that the Derek Falvey was promoted to this overarching role here. So very, very curious. Let's see. Let's jump back into the chat here. Let's see what people are saying. Adam says Wallner would have real value if they wanted to move him, but not sure what that does for the team. Really hard to say. We're not part of the trade conversations. Maybe it would bring back something, that like Tom said, the Twins have 73 corner outfielders that are, knocking on the door for the big leagues. So Wallner could hold some appeal. Let's see. Bryce says interview process is a slideshow of 2000s Twins. Whoever can name the most gets the gig. Okay, Greg, you might have a chance there.
I would have been right in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Right. Yeah. That. I wonder how much that was a part of it. Yeah.
Luis Rodriguez. I knew that one.
I knew it.
The press conference made it seem that way. He's like, we got LaTroy back there. We got he's naming all the guys.
Flashcards.
He's in.
Yeah. How about this? We can speculate a little bit. What comes next? Let's talk about the coaching staff. I asked a question at this press conference about what Shelty's looking for in his next bench coach. What he said is he is looking for somebody who he can trust, who can kind of push back on him a little bit, somebody who can be hard with the team when he's being soft, and vice versa. That's going to be important. But the big part that I got, like I mentioned before, is he's looking for experience. He's looking for an experienced bench coach. And that led me to something that I said on the Twins Off Daily podcast the other night that I hope happens, that I don't have a ton of faith will happen. I wonder if James Rowson would be a good pick to be the bench coach. He has experience not only as a hitting coach and coordinator, but he was a bench coach, I believe, with the Miami Marlins after he left the Twins. It sounds like they were really impressed with him in the interview process. Having James Rowson here feels like that would be the best option if they could make something like that happen. But can't say I'm optimistic. What do you guys think? You think it'd be good for them to have maybe a veteran, maybe somebody who even has managerial experience in the bench coach role, which Jace Tingler had that too, and people speculate went sour there.
I mean, that seems almost like a little.
Was he implying that he is the bad cop or the good cop in this situation?
I think it flip flops is what he's trying to say.
I was going to say if he was going to be the bad cop, I would be banging the table to bring in Matt Leroy just forever. But no. But Nick, what were you about to say?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, the idea that he wants kind of like a more experienced guy, because to me, he is the experienced guy who is the manager. And from my view, if we're talking about a rebuild and sort of, creating the next generation of Twins baseball here, I think you'd probably be looking at Shelton as more of a placeholder. I think they probably would even admit that they kind of are. So the thing that I've been thinking since this hire was announced is that it makes sense to bring in maybe a bench coach who was even a little too green to really be considered for the manager position yet, but could learn under a guy who's got a lot of experience, who is well known for his relationship building, who's been a bench coach, who's been in that position. So that's what would interest me most. I think Rowson would be a fine choice. Don't get me wrong, but it just sort of exacerbates the going back to the same old well
Sure.
dynamic.
Sure.
But the thing I struggle with this position and a lot of the coaching staff, and I wrote about this on Twins Daily this week, is like, does anyone want to come here? Like players, free agents, coaches that are in demand. This team does not have a good reputation right now, I don't think, from the way people are leaving are talking about it, from the way it's being run, from the fan morale. They brought in Shelton because it was a pretty easy hire. I don't think anyone else was looking to hire him. So if you're looking sort of an in-demand up-and-comer, we know that a guy who's a bench coach on a team that does really well is immediately kind of getting vaulted into those managerial conversations. Derek Shelton is a perfect example of that. Like, he got hired after that 100-win Bomba Squad season. Is this team going to have a chance to have any kind of success in the next few years where you're going to become that candidate to be the riser and take that next step? I mean, that's obviously, I think, what a lot of these in-demand sort of bench coach candidates are. So that's something that gives me a lot of concern. And in that regard, I'd almost be a little disappointed if it was someone like Rowson, where it's another guy who maybe just didn't have another opportunity to fall back on.
Is there such thing as, like, obviously there are like the hot names out there, right? Like I'm not gonna pretend that there aren't names that get bounced around, like Albernaz from Cleveland, who just got a job, and I'm blanking on it, where he's the skipper of them. There we go. Like, yeah, obviously those guys exist, but I mean, does it matter if they're like, a quality coach can be a quality coach. Like, it doesn't have to be like an A name. So I'm a little bit skeptical. I get totally what you're saying. I think that there are a lot of organizations that people perceive, people in the baseball world probably perceive as better, or a more better place to work, or a better place to maybe jumpstart your career, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like that only applies to like a handful of names. And there are so many great baseball coaches out there that I don't get too wound up, I guess, about that. I totally get what you're saying, but I struggle to, like, I don't know, like, and I guess this might just be because I'm like a fan on the outside. I don't know all of the names that are possibly being combed through for a job like this. But yeah, I'm super curious to see who they end up going with. I know that he kind of said, like, just because like I was here before doesn't mean this is going to be like just a continuation of Rocco, like, that I plan on keeping every single coach or whatever. Like, I think he said, like, Tommy Watkins is the only person who was here when I was here. So like, I'm not like attached to any of these names, which I think a lot of Twins fans were kind of worried about, was that it was just going to be a new figurehead, maybe, Jace Tingler or an assistant hitting coach or whatever are going to be moved out, and then we're just going to continue with the same ship. I would assume, like, from that answer, I think that this is one of the answers that I am reading into, is I think from that answer, we can assume that there is going to be some motion there.
Yeah. Tom says, if I'm pitching the Twins as a destination, I'm preaching loyalty and job security. This Shelton hire is another sign of that, like it or not. That is a good point. We're looking at the familiarity aspect as, unexciting and kind of a detriment, but that could be appealing to somebody. That could be something that's, and, I brought it up on the Twins Off Daily podcast too, that might be an appealing bench coach job, because you could be thrust into action in the next couple of years, depending on what shakes out here. So it will be interesting to keep an eye on for sure. Let's see. The last thing we should probably touch on before we leave here, I feel like so many of the answers that we're seeking are being bottlenecked because of the uncertainty around the minority owners that have yet to be announced yet, which they can't be announced yet. They have to be approved by the league first, of course. We can't really hear too much about them until that point. But so much is just being blocked up by that. And, it feels like, depending on who they are, could mean some good things for the club, could mean some bad things for the club. What do you guys think? What are you expecting to hear when we get some news about the minority owners?
Now, neither of us are going to talk
Yeah,
Okay.
I can never tell, Greg. You don't have a face, so I'm just like, maybe he'll talk. I don't know.
Welcome to my world.
I'm gonna be, yeah, I know. I'm gonna be real with you. Not to get completely like be a doomer about this, but the fact that we do have to, like not we as in the, but like the team has to wait for this to be settled and officialized. Like it doesn't really matter what the minority owners do intend, whether they intend to like go full what the private equity on this and milk it for all it's worth, or whether they want to come in and win, whatever. None of it does matter until they are officially in their position. Like
Yeah.
whatever sway they're going to have does not matter. And if that doesn't get finalized until the end of the year, into the like like the end of December or whatever, um, I don't know. Like it might just be a lost off season, no matter what the answer is.
Sure.
Like it's totally possible that this is an offseason that moves a little quicker and a bunch of the names fall off the board and a bunch of the trades that were going to happen go elsewhere because the Twins are stuck with their finger up there, you know what, and waiting for the final word on what they can do and what they can't do. That I don't know, man. Like it's totally possible that we hit like January and they're like, okay, we've got to just pick through the scraps, like which isn't, I guess, unlike what they often do during the off season, kind of waiting it out and whatnot. But I don't know. I feel like there's a chance that they might just like miss out on like half of the off season, and it might. I don't know. It might. I don't know. I don't want to. I don't want to get too deep down this rabbit hole. But I would like, even if they are going to try to compete, they might run out of time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that decision's already made, and this is almost just like running cover for it. And this end of the year thing, I don't know if this was what you were referencing, Greg, but I saw there was a quote from Joe Polad just today, I think, that he was asked about the minority owners, and he said, I'm going to kick myself if I put a timeline on it. I'll say by the end of the year, which, I mean, still 2 more months until the offseason is like, or the over half over by the end of the year. So which is wild, but yet they continue to make these comments like, well, we don't really know what the parameters are. We have these new owners coming in. Like they're very openly positioning that as sort of what's holding them back. I've been of the opinion that it's just, I think it was signaled from the deadline that they weren't going to spend this season and they weren't going to try to compete next year. Like if they were going to spend money, where would they even spend it? They would spend it on the bullpen, which this is not front office and spending a bunch of money on free agent relievers. Like you would have to abandon everything you know about them to think that they're going to have any kind of aggressive offseason, even if they had flexibility. So that's pretty much written in stone to me. And it's like, hopefully when they announce these minority owners, it'll give some kind of enthusiasm boost. I don't know. I assume it'll be some familiar names of some kind because they're really leaning on it to be their energizer at this point. There's nothing else really. I mean, unless you're getting excited about the Shelton hiring.
Yeah.
Does anybody know off the top of their head when the owners meetings are this year?
Let's see.
like
Do those happen? Do those happen before or after the GM meetings? Because there's the GM meetings, there's the winter
late
meetings.
November.
The late November. That's probably sounds about right.
So I guess that's probably the date where we probably have to have circled like this is the earliest we can possibly know what direction they're going to go. And yeah, like you're saying, Nick, like it's very possible. Like, and you said this on Twitter to me earlier, and I just said like we don't know. I don't pretend. I don't like to pretend to know things until I actually do, if I ever do. But it's really easy. It's so easy to look at all of this and say this isn't going the way that Twins fans want it to, and this is just cover. But either way, man, they just need to announce it. Like it just needs to get out there who these owners are.
I know a guy who's about $1.5 billion richer in the last couple of years. That's Mr. Glenn Taylor. Thanks for the alley-oop, Tom. Maybe he comes in, man. Maybe he misses the game. He wants to get back in it.
It's going to be a multi-year, multi-pronged transition. Those never
there
go
we go.
wrong.
Oh, can't wait to read that burn book, baby. That'll be quite the hefty Bible there. Okay, well, you know what? I think that might be a cheery note for us to maybe try to land this plane here. This was a lot of fun. We hope to do some more of these over the off season for sure, especially as maybe news breaks or as we approach the winter meetings, which hopefully could be fun. you never know. Maybe there'll be some trades. Maybe there'll be a couple, low wattage sightings. But Twins Daily will be here to talk about it with you. Thank you all for joining us on this the live edition here of Twins Daily off-season live, I guess is what we're going to call it. Nick, Greg, any last words before we say goodbye?
Nothing from me. It's good. Always good chatting with you guys. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, of course. Greg, anything?
My last word is serendipitously.
Okay, serendipitously. You heard it here, folks. Greg is feeling serendipitous. All right. See y'all later. Of course, stay sweet, everybody.